Over on to our final talk of the evening. Marc Littlemore is going to give his talk now on developing an inclusive engineering team.
Right, thank you very much. Some fantastic speakers tonight, I have to say. I've learned a lot, so thanks to Johnny, Simona, Louisa for their wonderful talks. Thanks to Isaac, Andy, and Martin for organising this as well. It's been really good fun. So today I'm going to talk about something sort of less technical, but something I'm sort of very passionate about, and more about sort of software team cultures. So for those that don't know me, I'm currently a software engineering manager at Gamma Telecoms, and I've been there for about 6 weeks. So don't ask me anything about SIP or XMPP yet, because I don't know enough. But before that, I was 8 years at the BBC, started as a principal engineer, and then moved on to being a team lead. And prior to that, a long time, as many of my team who I can see on the call are going to laugh at, I was in video games for about 19 years. And it was a common thing where I used to tell them. So I think we all know this. It should seem obvious to everyone. The key to writing great software is a great engineering team. Now, nowadays, we all know that it's not a single person building applications anymore. Gone are the days of the sort of 80s software and the old 80s video games. You see someone in a room on their own. It's all about a great team. But for me, building those great teams is more than just finding the best developers. Now, I'll put best in quotes there, because I think we often think that in our hiring, we've got to find like these key, they always call them like the 10x developers or the rock star developers. And I really don't agree with that. I think it's more about building an inclusive team that we can all build up together and work together. So inclusive teams. So I'm going to talk a bit about my experience really at the BBC, because obviously I've only been at Gamma for 6 weeks. So I joined the BBC in 2013, and I came across from a completely different cultural technology, the video games industry, for the BBC sort of inclusive nature. At the time, my children, who were 13 and 11 now, were quite young. And I was all about the education and the things that the BBC brought, the things I was brought up on. So I became a team lead in 2017, and I spent a lot of time thinking about inclusivity, because I was asked to scale up a team from, I think, 4 or 5 people up to 9. And how was I going to build that sort of positive team culture, the sort of team that I wanted and wanted to be in. And I think that meant being more inclusive. But the question is, what do we mean by that? And I think here's what I think I mean by inclusive teams. And people may have varying definitions, but for me, it's this safe space for people to learn and grow, and then equal opportunities for everyone to have, to be afforded those same opportunities, regardless of who they are, where they came from. So why do we need inclusivity? And as I've said here, it's a silly question, right? I hope everyone's going, yeah, Mark, yeah, that is a silly question. And some companies just don't think about it. And I've done, I did some interviews myself quite recently, and I would always ask them how do they feel about inclusivity and diversity? And they were always like, oh, we don't care who we hire. We just, we just want the right person. But I think you need to build that culture of inclusivity and diversity into the things you look at when you're building a team. So how do we ensure we do that? So we need to think about representation for everyone, I think. And we're going to get all of these different people when we hire and we think about inclusivity. We can embrace those differences in people. We're going to get loads of unique people and thus unique insights. And I think from that, we're going to get better decisions. So we can sort of embrace those differences, and there will be obviously similarities as well in people. But it allows people to bring their sort of whole self to work and not just hide away things that they're uncomfortable, or feel uncomfortable about within the team talking about. And we need to avoid those sort of teams, I think. And I've got this quote that I really like. It's a rising tide lifts all boats. Now, it's always attributed to JFK. Now, I've looked on Wikipedia. Apparently, he saw it on the wall of the New England Council Chamber of Commerce. So it's not actually his quote. It's actually on the wall. So the true meaning behind this is that an improved economy will benefit all participants. That's what he meant when he said that. But I like to apply it to how you build a positive team culture. So I think that by helping a single person, considering a single person within your team, that quickly helps to lift up the whole team. So that's what I mean by that. And I think it's just a really good quote. So if we want to develop our inclusive teams, I think we all, hopefully everyone on the call is going to agree with me that we should be considering this. So what do we need to do? So I've got a few tips that I've sort of thought about as I was writing this talk. So I think it all starts with people like me. I'm an engineering manager, I'm a leader. Above me, I've got software engineering, head of software engineering, I've got CTOs. From that level down, we need to think about it at the top. So we need that buy-in from sort of the senior people within our companies and with our teams. And they need to sort of understand what inclusivity is. And I think, if we can highlight to people like that, we're going to get increased innovation, we're going to get unique insights, we're going to get better decisions because of this mix of people, these brilliant people that we've got in. Then we get that buy-in. And I think, we frame it in that way that we can make this big sort of cultural change at scale. The stakeholders love that sort of talk, don't they? We can talk about how building this inclusive culture is going to make the company more attractive, and we're going to deliver faster and things like that. Now, more recently, I've been reading a book, and I'm sure a few of you have probably read it too, called Atomic Habits by James Clear. I've just finished it. And it's all about how you build a habit and how you make it, make sure that it's habitual. You make it obvious, you make it attractive, you make it easy, you make it satisfying. It's this sort of reward loop for being a habit. And I think we need to do that day to day in what we do. And we need to be talking about it sort of daily. So we need to raise awareness of it. We need to encourage these sort of conversations that I'm having here today, and try and practice those inclusive behaviors. So the big thing for me is it starts with hiring, because I think we don't think about inclusivity when we think about hiring. We think about, we need to get this software out, we need someone else to join our team, we need a React expert, blah, blah, blah. So I did a lot of hiring over the past few years when I was building up my own team. And I had a job advert, which I'll show you in a minute, for a junior software engineer. And I really wanted to make sure it was right and it was inclusive and it was diverse. I read a report which said that women were less likely to apply for positions than men because of the language in the advert. So you've got to consider the language. Most adverts say, we need to have a React expert and a Vue expert, and they need to know about CouchDB and DynamoDB, and they need to know DevOps. And we ask for all of these things, and we don't consider that, like, most of the time we don't actually need that. It's just the things that are on the fringe of what people might actually do day to day. So if we can frame it in a way that it's nice to have, you may want a key skill, but it's nice to have some of the others, but you don't have to be an expert. You don't need those. It's that language that we use in our adverts. I put mine through a gender decoder as well, just to see whether me, being a white male, I was going to write an advert which was very male dominated. Thankfully, it actually came out quite positive that it wasn't, but it was just to see if my language that I used was not considered right. And support flexible working. Now, we've all had the past year where it's been a bit crazy and we've all done remote work, but me and my team, and hopefully a few of the people that are perhaps in the chat now might tell you, we've done remote working for about sort of 5 or 6 years. And we've been sort of multi-site when I was at the BBC. And that sort of flexibility is going to start to encourage inclusivity. You're going to think about people who are perhaps neurodiverse and say, I don't actually want to come into an office with a lot of people. That bothers me. And we can encourage people like that. We could say working mothers, we've got this flexibility, you could work part-time. We start offering things like that, and then we're going to get a more inclusive and diverse set of people. So this is my advert that I put down. I'm just going to go through a few of the key points because you probably can't read it all there. But things that I said were, we don't expect everyone to have the experience of all of the below, the things underneath. But this just gives an example of the technologies and practices we value. We're always aiming to make our team the best it can. So I'm trying to say, like, as a team, we work together. We're culturally, we're trying to get sort of nice people within the team. A great candidate will be able to talk to other developers, because we all know that development is not just about writing code. It's about collaboration. It's about talking to others. Happy to communicate with people remotely across multiple sites. I've called out the fact that we're quite flexible there. And the bit at the bottom, we don't need you to be an expert on any of these, but some use of them, along with an understanding of their underlying principles, will be great. Don't feel that you can't apply if you don't have all of these skills. I want people to apply to these roles. You're going to be mentored by a friendly development team, and the BBC provides many opportunities for learning. We're talking about, like, all of the things they're going to get by joining the team. And I think it's that positivity that we've put out there right from the start that's really helpful. Building a safe space, and this is a big one. And I think as leaders, if there's engineering leaders on here, we need to model this behavior that we want to see within the team. So we ourselves have to encourage sharing, being open, transparent. And it's that psychological safety of the team, the open and honest sort of ability to be open and honest within the team. You've got to share those vulnerabilities, as much as people are comfortable with, and you have to understand those boundaries, but you can share, emotions, experiences, things that have happened to you, which I think is really useful and makes people feel at ease. And then we get this sort of inclusive teams. Admitting you don't know is a big thing, and I think it's a big thing for a lot of senior engineers. Been in the industry for ages. We know everything, but you don't. Technology changes so quickly. It's changed so quickly since I've moved industries from like a video games tech to more web tech and cloud apps and scaling, things like that. I don't know. I've moved into a new industry now. I don't know much about telecoms, but admitting that you don't know as a senior person really helps like the less experienced people to feel comfortable with saying, I don't know, and asking questions. I always say there's no such thing as a silly question within my team. And the blameless culture, I hope everyone on the call now, hold your hands up if you've broken the build or you've broken the live environment. I know I have. Yeah, I can see Johnny's hand there. Yeah, I've definitely done that. And the thing for me is, it shouldn't be someone's fault. It should be the process that you've built, which allowed someone to get to the point of breaking it. And how do we fix that? It's not someone's fault. It's the process. It's the team. The team owns that. The team, their processes have failed there, so we can make those better. So it's that bullet. It's not blaming people. So let people feel heard. Now, we've all been in those meetings with the loudest voices. And if you're not comfortable, I think people have realized here, I'm quite comfortable at public speaking now. I've practiced that over a long time, but there's always those meetings where there's the loud voices, there's the experts, there's the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion in the room. Not always the highest paid person, but perhaps the most senior, who's been on the team for the longest, or is the principal engineer, or the most senior role. We need to avoid just those voices being heard and those people making those decisions. I really like to ask questions. The BBC is infamous, as I'm sure many companies are, for acronyms. We had so many acronyms at the BBC, and I think when you're junior to the team, when you're new to the team, and you don't know what they mean, you're a little bit embarrassed, and you don't want to ask, what does that mean? So for me, as sort of someone more senior in the team, I would say, can you just explain what the acronym means, please? And so people feel more comfortable at asking those questions and understanding that you don't know everything, you won't know everything in these meetings. And I also ask questions of the people in the meeting. So I always like to try and bring the others in who may be a little bit quieter. What's your opinion on that? People might not be comfortable answering those questions or asking those questions, but I think we're trying to bring the whole team together there. And because they're in asynchronous meetings, it's the thing we tried at the BBC, which was those like things like Dropbox Paper or Google Docs, where you'd set out an agenda and you'd allow people to talk over like a period of a week, and you'd say, well, this is going to end in a week. And you get everyone's decisions, people who are not comfortable at speaking out in sort of meetings with senior stakeholders, and it's a bit worrying. So you get everyone's opinions, then that's really valuable. And for those people, I don't know if you know Simon Sinek. He's sort of an author, inspirational speaker. He's written a book called Start With Why, which is really good. But he has this video, which when you get the slides, I've linked to on there, which is called Be the Last to Speak. And I think this really holds true of anyone who's more senior in a team, which is if you can hold your opinions back a little bit to yourself until the very end, it gives everyone else in your team this feeling that they've been heard and that they can speak first before the senior person. And then you get the benefit of hearing all these different opinions, and you can form an opinion based on knowledge you might not have known. I think that's really useful, and it makes everyone feel included. Giving feedback is a big thing. One-to-one meetings as sort of senior people, managers, is key. It's that openness and honest feedback in public, but we're now doing it in private. You've got to ask people how they want this feedback, but constantly giving it to them, being an active listener in those meetings. It gives you the opportunity to act early when you find that people are struggling with things. You can give them extra support. You can sort of drive where those people want to go, really, by this sort of this constant feedback. And also being encouraging. I'm really surprised at how many people don't do this regularly. And I wonder whether it's a slightly a British thing where we're very quick to complain, but we're not so quick to praise, are we? We don't like to tell people that they've done a good job. So you've hired these people into your team for a reason. You think they're brilliant. So you don't want to just leave them on their own and leave them, 6 months, don't tell them anything, go off and do the job. Here's the documentation. You want to give them that regular feedback and not just every, few months. So the one-to-one should be pretty regular. And share their successes. We used to, tell them when they're doing a good job and obviously, help them when they're needed. At the BBC, we used to have this kudos channel with our team, which was great because someone did something great. You just ping something in the kudos channel and say, well done to so-and-so. You've done a great job. That was an amazing demo. That was a great talk. Thanks for helping me pair program on this. I didn't know what I was doing. Those sort of things, we're all human. We all like praise. So let them learn. I think it's a big thing for getting an inclusive environment. You've got to provide that learning environment for people. We used to do the thing that's been made popular by Google is 10% time, or sometimes called innovation time, or maybe 20% time, depending on how long you get. It was like an afternoon a week where people would work on things which were part of their own learning, but perhaps also helped with some of our applications. Perhaps we needed some extra tests somewhere, or we needed some to refactor something, or we'd do a little proof of concept. Hopefully Marc, who I think is on the call, was on my team, and we did a few proof of concepts together where we built things out, demoed, and the people went, that's brilliant. Why don't we productionize that? Why don't we take that to live? Having learning sessions. So I had a few less experienced engineers on my team, and I wanted to really help them to build up. So I'd weekly learning sessions where I'd help them. And then we had knowledge sharing. So we'd get like senior engineers who had the domain specific knowledge, because for the BBC, I was in authentication and authorization. It's quite complex. You need to know the ins and outs of the various flows that we had and how that worked. And that was a really good sort of learning experience for both the inexperienced people, but also the senior people. They're mentoring, they're coaching. Same with pair programming. It's good both ways. People are learning who don't know anything, about that piece of that feature that you're implementing. But also it gets like inexperienced junior people to say, why did you do it like that? And the senior people have to then think and go, well, do you know what? There might be a reason why we did that. And yeah, you're right, we should refactor it, but we can't because of X, Y, and Z. And it's about that sort of collaboration and inclusion there. A big one for me that I love, and it's sharing your network. Hopefully, when you've been at a company for a while, you've got a reputation, and hopefully that reputation is a decent one. It's not a bad one. Otherwise, I'm sure you'll have left by then. But you're sharing, if you can share your team and share your own reputation at the company with people beyond your team, you're building people's confidence. You're offering up opportunities. You're allowing people to find coaches and mentors from outside of your team. And they might find that, oh, do you know what? I actually want to work on that team eventually. And they might sort of decide where they want to go in their career. You're helping to drive that. And you suggesting those to people, it's that whole senior person endorsement and sponsorship of people, which is really valuable. If someone likes me and values me and I've helped them in the past, me saying that someone on my team is great, should be working with them, that's a big endorsement there. And finally, inspiration with humility. I think we all have to be humble. We all know that there's things that we don't do which are right. We all make mistakes. I think if we can admit those publicly, it builds that sort of behaviors within the team where we accept that we don't know everything and we do make mistakes and we can ask for help there. And we've got to model all of those inclusive behaviors that I've all talked about, previously. And that really helps. So I'm glad, Isaac, you gave me a little bit more than 10 minutes. I've gone on for 20 minutes, haven't I? I've just seen. So what's next? If you're going to develop those inclusive teams, have a think about what I've said. And here's what I want you to take home from this. Obviously, there are no silver bullets. We'd love there to be, but there's no easy way. You just have to bite the bullet. You just have to get started. You have to start talking about it. Talking about inclusion like we've done today. If you're a leader on the call, start thinking about the one thing you want to do tomorrow. If you're in a team that you don't feel is inclusive, start talking to like your team lead or your manager or whatever about what you want to happen. Talk to your teammates, and between you, we can start building up these inclusive teams. Thank you very much. If you've got any questions, I'd love to hear them. If they're on Slido, marclittlemore.com. I've written some articles. I like talking about this sort of thing. So there's a few articles on my website. At Marc Littlemore on Twitter. I'm quite active on there, although I've taken it off my phone because I use it too much, but I'll still answer you. And then on LinkedIn, just give me a shout. And it's Marc with a C. Lovely. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, Marc. Love that. I think it's transferable in any business as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And somehow I don't think that you're going to ever live that era within the BBC. I don't think.
I'm trying to think of what my worst one at the BBC was. We had our principal engineer, and he's happy to tell you this, took down most of the BBC by changing some image paths once. And he took the BBC down for a couple of minutes. It was all right. We got back. So, yeah. Strictly Come Dancing, we've had some fun. Some of my team on the call, we used to support Strictly Come Dancing, so with our authentication services, and we had some fun with that as well.
Marvellous. Really good talk, mate, and thanks once again. There's some good questions that come through. So first one, Marc, what would you say are the key traits of a successful software engineering manager?
It's a good question because I've only been in the role for 6 or 7 weeks. I think, hopefully I've talked a little bit about it there. I think open and honest conversation. I really like transparency. I like being honest with people. And I think doing that from the off and building those sort of relationships with your team. As I mentioned, about the hiring and stuff like that, I try and bring the sort of positivity in there from the off. And I think those conversations, you've got to have those regular one-to-ones with your team to make sure that you're, you're building up the team in the right way. And then, there's lots of stuff for sort of software engineering managers beyond just that, because you're that screen between the sort of senior stakeholders generally and your team, and you've got to be accepting of the fact that there are things you're going to have to ask the team to do at certain points because they need to be done, but also you've got to be that shield for your team. You're there to represent them with the senior stakeholders, and it's your responsibility to push back as well. If you don't think that you can do that in a timely manner, you have to tell people. And I think you have to, as long as you're honest about that. And I think that's what I like is those honest conversations. You can explain why. So I think, hopefully that's helpful.
Lovely. How would you attract diverse people who are less comfortable selling themselves in verbal interviews, but could do the actual role?
That's a great question, and I think Isaac, you probably know bits about this as well, because you're obviously in hiring, and I'm a hiring manager, but I don't do it necessarily day to day. I think we've got to look at what we do with hiring. We've got to consider whether things like whiteboard interview type processes are the right thing. I don't think they are. I've done whiteboard interviews and I've panicked, and I've got 27 years of professional development experience. It scares me. My mind just goes blank, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I think one of the biggest things that people can do now, and I wish I'd learned more about this a while ago, is the sort of idea of building public a little bit. So some of the people that you're more aware of are just more vocal about what they do, writing blog posts. I think even if you're quite junior, writing things like blog posts, which is, I learned this thing, here's what I learned, is a really good way to sort of get people to know what you do. You get a CV in and you say, well, I've done all this. I've written this serverless function. I've done a bit of a micro front end in React or Vue or whatever. I've done this Terraform. I've deployed this Terraform thing. I've learned about the visitor pattern. There you go. I've got everyone's talks in. Things like that, where you're talking about things that you didn't know before, you now know. They're really good things to sort of sell to people within the context of trying to get a job. It's hard. It says, I can see the question, it says less comfortable with selling themselves. I think to a little bit, to a certain extent, that's part of the interview process. You're trying to show that you have some skills. But I think, as I said with my interview when we did the junior software engineer role, I was definitely looking for someone culturally didn't have everything, would want to learn lots. I think coming across as wanting to learn, I didn't know that, but I found out about it. For me, in interviews, that's a really sort of like amazing, like, yay, I love that. And so, well, I didn't know about it. Someone asked me about it, but I learned about it on this blog, or I watched this YouTube video on, I did this Udemy course or whatever. I think learners, because technology changes. I think everyone who's spoken today, and I'm sure everyone in the audience knows that what they did this time last year is completely different to what they do now, because things just change. There's always new technologies, especially in the Node and JavaScript world. That there's a 1,000 new libraries and frameworks come out every day. So just being a learner, I think. Sorry, I waffled on for that question.
No, it was a question that I guess opened up a bag of worms, doesn't it? It's a very good question, actually, and I think something that we should all be looking at within the industry.
Definitely
positively change. Thanks for that, mate. Next question: what's the biggest challenge you've faced when building inclusive engineering teams operating remotely, and how did you overcome this?
Good question. So I drove remote working from about 2015. Long story, I was very ill, and it just meant that I couldn't come into an office. So I was remote to a team for quite a while, and I had to try and drive that change of remote before remote was more common, before everyone had Zoom, before everyone did a pandemic remote working. And I think sort of the remote first style culture is what you need to aim for. You don't want a room full of people who happen to be in an office and a single person or a couple of people on a Zoom call or equivalent. I used to have a single laptop, which I don't know if people are aware of what a jabber is, but it's like a little speaker that you can sort of, used to be attached by a wire, but you can get wireless versions of them that used to pass around the room, and you could barely hear anyone, and they'd all be talking across each other, talking to each other in a room, and there'd be me on a call going, I don't really know what's happening here. Or the other one was they couldn't find a meeting room because BBC meeting rooms are impossible to find, and they'd sit near the kitchen, which was always fun, sort of like a 12 o'clock meeting or a 1 o'clock meeting where people are still having their lunch and people are still washing up and making a cup of tea and clanking around. You just couldn't hear. So I think if one person's remote, everyone should be remote. I think that's the way it works. And I know probably everyone on the call now has done this throughout the year because everyone's remote. But yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the biggest challenges, was just getting the buy-in for that. I'm hoping comfortable with remote working and want to continue doing it. That a lot of companies realised that we did all right in the past year. We were busy dealing with a pandemic, and whether we could go out, whether we could get to the supermarket and buy food or not, and we did all right. And remote working's kind of works. We've said it for years, but I think companies are realising that now. So hopefully you will have to do less of that buy-in that I did sort of about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Marvellous. What techniques would you recommend to get a group of people learning together, like devs?
So I guess an interesting one. So I think things where you pair people together. I think pair programming is valuable. You can't do it all day. I definitely do agree that. And I think we found that, especially during the sort of remote, the completely remote, where you're already talking to people. A lot of people transferred their remote working during the pandemic to do what I do in the office, but do it on Zoom. And that doesn't work. You need to have this asynchronous nature to it to a certain extent. I like the things like learning sessions. Things that my previous sort of team did was like swarming on things, like mob programming and swarming on. So that's 3 or 4 developers coming together to solve a problem together. So, one person might be coding, another one suggesting stuff. We're architecting it together. Those sort of things work really well. And then, as I mentioned sort of earlier, those sort of domain learning sessions are really useful. Like we don't know anything about React or Vue or whatever. Why don't 3 of us get together and build an app in that? That 10% time was really useful. We'll just get together and we'll learn from each other. We'll learn. We'll start trying to build an application in an afternoon and see what happens. Things like that, where you can get people together on a common idea, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, and if a company's not got that like 10% time, that you talked about, I guess as an engineering manager, how do you think it would be best approached as an engineer wanting to get something like that?
It's as if you were sitting in a meeting with me and a CTO earlier this week, Isaac, where I had that very conversation. I just tried to sell the benefits of it, because I think sometimes 10% time, he said, the 10% time when people have said to me, it's a time when they say, oh, I can learn so I can get a new job. And I said, well, you shouldn't be framing it like that. You should be framing it as it's a learning opportunity for someone to get better, and to sort of drive their own career. But it also can be valuable to the company. As I mentioned, like, proof of concepts to say, well, we know we don't have time to do this feature, but wouldn't it be nice if we could? And if someone mocks up something relatively simple, not production ready, but in an afternoon or a couple of afternoons, and you can present that to a board of stakeholders and go, well, we've done this. If you give us the time to do it, we can productionize it, and it will deliver this value. It's things like that where you've got to frame it and sell those benefits of it for both the team, for both the individual and for the company. And I think that really helps.
Yeah, agree. Still got, there's another 5 questions. Are you okay to?
I'm happy. Yeah.
Marvelous.
My wife's taking my son to football, so it's all good.
I hope he's not got a stitch after the spaghetti and meatballs.
It was a while ago. He should be all right now. And he's 13, so he just like, yeah.
I remember being that age.
Can eat anything and then run around.
What do you think a good dev culture looks like across the department?
Collaboration, sharing, talking to each other. I think that's key. Testing for sure. I'm big on testing and making sure applications are well tested. I think culturally, I don't like silos. I've not liked sort of single points of failure. And I don't know if people have heard the idea of the bus factor, the number of people that need to get hit by a bus before the thing stops working because there's no one to work on it. It's quite an awful thing. I heard it, God, about 25 years ago, I think. And it's the idea that like only a single person knows. And I definitely suffered from that when I took over, and as a team lead, we had a particular application where it was like a bit of a hot potato. We were asked to develop a cloud version of it. So it was a like for like sort of transition from an old platform to the cloud, but almost no one owned it. No one loved it. So a contractor left. So then one of the senior engineers took it, and then the senior engineer decided he was going to leave, and then no one owned it. And it's those sort of things where I think you need sort of collaboration and people working together on things. I think that's a good development culture for me. And I think there's loads of things. I've mentioned sort of documentation is key, testing, things like that. But I think that there's a thing called the scouting rule, which I don't know if people have heard of, which is the idea that the original Boy Scouts back in the day said, leave the campsite better than you found it. And I think if you look at your code base, we all accrue technical debt regularly. And I think thinking about it, you can't always address it, but if you address it early enough, because you think, well, do you know what? I could just tidy up that little thing then. Obviously, we can get into the whole don't make massive pull requests or merge requests if you're on GitLab. We'll slightly put that aside. But if you think that something needs fixing, at least create a ticket for it. At least write it down somewhere. At least mark it for yourself or the team to say we should really fix that. That's going to be problematic. I mean, it's that sort of constant iteration and taking care of the code base. So hopefully, it just doesn't rot, which is very easy. So. Yeah, I think there's lots to unpick with dev culture, and if anyone's on the call and wants to talk about dev culture and what they think is good dev culture, that'd be a nice talk, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Have you struggled on inclusivity for more senior positions? In some way, they will require more experience. So how do you balance that in how you recruit?
That's a really good question.
Yeah, I
agree. Yes. I think definitely have. I think more men have applied for this. I had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine at the BBC when I was at the BBC, who is a black man, and he said that most of sort of the BAME community, and he particularly was around the Afro-Caribbean community, couldn't see themselves at the BBC. And I said, well, I'm trying to write inclusive like job adverts and things like that. And he's like, yeah, but they can't see senior people who look like them. I thought, yeah, I'm obviously, I'm a white middle-aged man. And for me, I was like a big like, shit, I didn't think about that. You know what I mean? It's things that you don't think about. So I think there's definitely a struggle for those senior positions, but I think if we can start bringing people in who are either more inclusive senior people, but I think we need to write the job adverts in such a way that we make them inclusive, but also bringing people through as well. So if we're bringing sort of junior people in, then again we don't just want white males coming through. That's the way it is. I think diversity is a massive challenge. I think it really is, and I think I will help to be an ally with that. I'm probably not the best placed person to understand it fully. I've definitely tried to be an ally with a lot of different people at the BBC when I was there, and likewise I'm going to do the same at Gamma to try and ensure that we don't just get white men in technology. So yeah, I hope I've sort of answered the question there. It's very difficult. Whoever asked that, I'm happy to catch up with you about that. That is a really difficult thing to solve, I think.
Yeah, it's a massive challenge, but I think you answered the question really well, Marc. Just a couple left. Do you have any advice on how to create progression plans for software devs so that they know what the next step up the ladder looks like and what they should know?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's got to be a two-way thing. So, firstly, hopefully you've got a decent manager that you can sort of talk to about this and be open and honest. And if not, start those conversations. And I think to a certain extent, you need to know what you would enjoy. And I think finding that sort of enjoyment is the challenge, and why we have these sort of learning type sessions, or 10% time I think is valuable for that. Like, I don't know this tech. I'm going to experience this tech to see if I like it. I think the higher you get up in a position, the more impact you have beyond your role and your team. I think so. For me as an engineering manager, my impact is across the business and with the SLT and things like that. That's my role. I have to try and bring people together. I think when you're sort of more junior, you're looking just at the feature or software for your team, or your single application. And the more senior you get up, you have more of that impact. But you've sort of got to decide, where you want to. Like, we can have this sort of T-shape where you're sort of a generalist, but you specialize in one thing. You can do that. I think that's quite good. But I think sort of talking to your manager about what you think you would like to do is the start of it. But also, it needs quite a proactive manager, which hopefully I've been over the years and will continue to be, to say, I think you'd be quite good at this. I've seen you excel in these things. That's what I try to do. I try to ensure that people, and any of my team that are in the chat now, please tell me if I didn't do this, but I tried to encourage people in the right direction for the things that I thought would be helpful to their careers. You could definitely see when people were more interested in one thing or another, and if I saw an opportunity with another team or things like that, I would definitely share that with them, and help them, or help them to move towards that. Yeah, hope that vaguely answers the question.
Yeah, marvelous, mate. And then finally, if you were a junior engineer again, but knowing all of this, how would you encourage your management and teammates to become more inclusive? Love that.
I wish I hadn't written this talk now. It's all these difficult questions for me, isn't it? It's a really great question as well. I think just having the conversations, and I know this is very easy for me to say as someone who's been in the industry for a long time. It's very easy for me to say, let's have these conversations, let's be open and honest about it. But I appreciate that I'm probably quite progressive compared to some managers, definitely my own managers in the past who've been like a delivery. We need to get this thing out. We need to get this product out. I think, listening to some of the things that I've talked about tonight, hopefully you can start having those conversations about how do we build out these inclusive environments, to help everyone. I genuinely think it's just about that communication and just being honest, and hopefully finding someone, your manager or equally teammates who think similarly, and hopefully more and more people do now. I mean, I definitely see it with my own children who are 13 and 11, and they're so much more inclusive than my youth from like the 70s and 80s or whatever. It's it's seeing the fact that the new people that are going to come in are going to help us to change this, as well as people like me who've been in the industry for a long time who go, do you know what? We do need to change this. So hopefully sort of answered that.
Yeah, done really well. A lot of questions there. So you've
cool. Thanks, everyone.
Really good talk, and then handled them well. Really appreciate that. Thanks, Marc.